So, I am standing in the freezing, pouring rain in the middle of Manhattan, clutching a soggy cardboard box that contains exactly 3 things: my favorite ergonomic stapler, a dying succulent, and my shattered dignity. Why am I standing in the rain looking like a wet, pathetic rat? Because Richard Sterling, CEO of Lightbringer Corp., supposed hero of the magical financial sector and the biggest hypocrite in New York, just fired me. You are just too rigid with the protocols, Oliver has said. He had told me, his perfectly capped teeth gleaming with fake sympathy. We need a team player, someone who doesn't constantly demand compensation for every little extra task. Translation: I refused to illegally cook his tax books, and I had the audacity to ask for my 3 months of unpaid overtime. 3 months. Do you know how many nights I slept under my desk to ensure his fake charity gala went off without a hitch? Too many. And now I was unemployed, broke, and effectively blacklisted from every righteous, magical corporation in the city. I ducked into a 24-hour diner, ordered the cheapest black coffee on the menu, and opened my incredibly battered laptop. Desperation makes you do crazy things. For me, that meant bypassing the standard job boards and logging onto the dark web's employment sector. Most of the listings were ridiculous. Looking for a blood sacrifice unpaid internship. Need a getaway driver who is also a certified notary. But then right near the bottom of the page, a listing caught my eye. Urgent hire executive secretary administrative manager at Apex Holdings. Warning: extreme mortality risk. Must be comfortable with high-stress environments, occasional property damage, and managing 5 very demanding executives. In exchange, 6-figure starting salary, 401k matching, and comprehensive top-tier dental insurance. I stared at the screen. Extreme mortality risk. I shrugged. Working for Richard Sterling made me want to jump out of a window daily anyway. But top-tier dental in this economy. I clicked apply. They replied in less than 2 minutes with an address in Brooklyn and a message: come now. 30 minutes later, I was standing in the penthouse lobby of a brutalist skyscraper that screamed, "We definitely launder money." The elevator doors opened with a chime, and I stepped out, my wet sneakers squeaking loudly on the pristine black Italian marble. I turned the corner into what was supposed to be the main boardroom and froze. The room was a disaster zone. The mahogany conference table was splintered in half. But that was not the issue. The issue was the blood and the screaming. 5 men were in the room. And even without my latent omega instincts screaming at me, I knew exactly what they were: apex predators, alpha class, the kind of criminals the magical government warned you about. One of them, a devastatingly pale guy with fangs, clearly a vampire, was casually sipping a dark red liquid from a crystal glass-looking board. Next to him, a massive man built like a tank was literally growling his werewolf traits, showing as he pinned a battered man in a tactical suit to the floor. A third man, surrounded by swirling, unnatural shadows, was floating a few inches off the ground. The fourth was adjusting his glasses meticulously, wiping a glowing, highly illegal acidic potion off his tailored suit. And then there was the fifth one. He was pacing. Every time he exhaled, actual smoke curled from his nostrils. A dragon shifter. They were torturing a corporate spy right in the middle of the office. My heart hammered against my ribs. Any sane person would have turned around, gotten back in the elevator, and moved to another country. But as I looked at the blood staining the floor, I didn't think about the danger. I thought about my unpaid overtime. I thought about my bank account, which currently had exactly $14.32 in it. I tightened my grip on my wet cardboard box, carefully stepped over a puddle of blood so it wouldn't ruin my only good pair of shoes, and cleared my throat. 5 terrifying glowing pairs of alpha eyes snapped toward me in instant lethal synchronization. The silence in the room became so heavy it was suffocating. "Excuse me," I said, my voice deadpan echoing slightly in the massive room. "But does this position pay time and a half on weekends? Because if I have to clean up blood, I need to know it's billable." The werewolf stopped growling. The vampire lowered his glass. The dragon shifter, the one smoking from the nostrils, narrowed his eyes, his pupils slitting like a reptile's. "Who the hell are you?" He snarled, his voice vibrating with enough bass to rattle my teeth. "You dare interrupt us?" Before I could politely inform him that I was here for the 9:30 p.m. interview, he lost his temper. He threw his hand forward and a massive roaring sphere of black hellfire erupted from his palm, rocketing straight toward my face. "Well, Oliver," I thought, closing my eyes, "at least you don't have to pay rent next month." I threw my hands up in a pathetic attempt to shield myself. Panic surged through me, triggering something deep inside my chest, a weird latent magic I had suppressed my entire life because it was supposedly useless in combat. The magic of order. I heard a strange popping sound, not an explosion, just a tiny, pathetic noise. I didn't burn to ash. I opened one eye. The sphere of hellfire was gone. Instead, gently floating through the air was a single neon yellow post-it note. It drifted gracefully across the room and slapped right onto the dragon shifter's forehead with a soft, smacking sound. I squinted. I had somehow transmuted his deadly ancient magic into office supplies. Printed on the post-it note in neat, bold font was the word denied. The entire room stared at the post-it note stuck to one of the most feared criminals in America. Then they stared at me. I stood there still dripping wet, holding my box with the dying succulent. The warlock with the shadows was the first to speak. A slow, highly amused smirk spread across his face. "I like him," he declared. "What did you say your salary expectations were, sweetheart?" "6 figures. I replied instantly, pulling the post-it note off my own mental list of things to panic about later. "And I don't work on major holidays." The vampire let out a dark, booming laugh. "You are hired, Omega. Welcome to Apex." I mentally shrugged. Honestly, I would rather work for 5 murderous magical terrorists than let another corporate overlord steal my paycheck. Day 4 at Apex Holdings, and I was genuinely considering if letting Caleb incinerate me would be less painful than auditing their third quarter expense reports. When you hear about Apex-level magical criminals, you picture masterminds. You picture shadowy empires running with lethal precision. Let me shatter that illusion for you. These 5 alpha masterminds were running a multi-million-dollar dark syndicate like a frat house with an unlimited credit card. They had 0 filing system. They were paying late fees on their electricity bill. The electricity bill, they had enough offshore accounts to buy a small European country, but they were currently facing 3 separate lawsuits from the city for unauthorized structural demolition. "Right," I said on Friday morning, dropping a massive, freshly printed binder onto the splintered mahogany table. The loud sound of the impact echoed in the boardroom. 5 pairs of terrifying, glowing eyes blinked at me. They were currently lounging around the room in various states of morning irritation. Vincent the vampire was glaring at a mug of blood, as if it had personally offended him. Wyatt the massive werewolf was picking his teeth with what looked suspiciously like a bone. "What is that?" Julian the warlock asked. He was floating horizontally about 2 feet above his chair, scrolling through his phone. "This," I announced, tapping the binder, "is the Apex Holdings Standard Operating Procedure, or SOP. You're all going to read it. You are all going to sign it. And if you violate it, I will personally deduct the fines from your petty cash." Caleb the Dragon Shifter scoffed, a tiny plume of smoke escaping his lips. "You are a Secretary Omega. We are warlords. We don't do paperwork." "You do now, scaled brain." I snapped back, completely out of patience. I had not had my morning coffee, and dealing with alpha egos pre-caffeine was a violation of my human rights. Because the IRS doesn't care if you are a warlord. Tax evasion is tax evasion. Al Capone went down for taxes, and he didn't even breathe fire. I pointed my clicky pen directly at Wyatt. "Rule number 1. Stop using the Italian leather sofa as a scratching post. Do you know the markup on custom upholstery? Use a tree like a normal canine." Wyatt let out a low, rumbling growl that rattled the windows. His eyes flashed gold. "I will rip your throat out for speaking to me like that." Rule number 2. I cut him off, pivoting to Ezra. The alchemist was meticulously arranging vials of glowing, highly toxic liquids on a coaster. "Ezra, you cannot requisition 3 gallons of basilisk venom on the corporate card without itemizing it. From now on, you fill out an inventory request form in triplicate. No form, no poison." Ezra's eye twitched. "It is for an assassination, Oliver." "I don't care if it is to kill the Pope, Ezra. We need a paper trail for the write-offs." I spun to Caleb. "And you." Rule number 3. No fire breathing within a 50-foot radius of the HP laser jet. Do you have any idea how expensive toner is? I will not be ordering magenta ink every 2 days because you have anger issues. The room went dead silent. The oppressive, heavy aura of 5 furious alphas bore down on me. The air grew cold thick with the scent of ozone blood and impending death. They were going to kill me. Obviously, I had overstepped. Julian stopped floating. Wyatt stood up, his claws fully extended. Caleb's throat began to glow orange. My heart did a frantic tap dance, and my latent order magic flared up again, a pure, desperate instinct. But instead of manifesting a post-it note, an invisible wave of energy rippled out from my body, washing over the entire room like a blast of cool, clinical air. Suddenly, the alphas froze. I watched as Wyatt's claws slowly retracted. The murderous tension in his shoulders melted away. Caleb exhaled, and instead of fire, a soft, harmless puff of white steam came out. Ezra touched his chest, his eyes widening in absolute shock. I didn't know this yet, but the dark magic that fueled them was a curse. It burned their veins, caused chronic pain, and constantly urged them toward violence. But my order magic, it was the ultimate neutralizer. When I yelled at them, when I forced structure onto their chaos, it was like pouring ice water over a terrible burn. It soothed the curse. They didn't just tolerate my nagging, their bodies were actively craving it. Well, I demanded oblivious to their internal magical epiphanies. Are we clear? Crystal. Vincent murmured, his crimson eyes tracking my every movement with a sudden intense fascination. Things held together for exactly 4 hours. At 2 p.m., I was in my office setting up an Excel spreadsheet when a catastrophic crash shook the entire building. The lights flickered and died. I marched out into the hallway using my phone flashlight. Down the corridor, the door to the primary server room had been blown off its hinges. Inside, Wyatt and Caleb were tangled in a vicious brawl, growling and throwing each other into the server racks. Sparks were flying everywhere. Julian was leaning against the wall laughing. "What is going on?" I shrieked. Wyatt ate the last slice of pepperoni pizza Julian supplied unhelpfully. I looked at the shattered server racks. The racks that held all the newly formatted financial data I had just spent 3 days organizing. Data that had not been backed up to the cloud yet. A terrifying cold calm washed over me. "Stop," I whispered. The order magic didn't just flare this time, it exploded. With a loud snapping noise, thick loops of heavy-duty magical duct tape materialized out of thin air, wrapping securely around Wyatt's snout and Caleb's wrists. Both alphas hit the floor with a heavy impact, totally immobilized. They looked up at me wide-eyed. "I am not re-entering that data," I said, my voice eerily quiet. I pointed to the far wall of the hallway. "Noses to the wall, both of you." Wyatt let out a muffled whine through the duct tape. Did I stutter wall? "Now. You are in a timeout until you learn how to behave like professionals." For a tense moment, I thought they would break the tape and tear me limb from limb. These were the most feared men in the American underworld. But then Wyatt slowly shuffled over to the wall and pressed his forehead against the wallpaper. Caleb grumbled, his tail drooping, and took a spot next to the werewolf facing the wall. I turned around to see Julian, Vincent, and Ezra staring at me. "Do you three want to join them?" I asked pleasantly. "No, sir," Julian said instantly, standing up very straight. I nodded, adjusting my tie. "Good, I need those expense reports by 5 p.m. As I walked back to my office, I didn't see the way all 5 of them were looking at me. It wasn't the look of predators stalking prey. It was the look of men who had just found religion, and its name was middle management. By week 3, something deeply unsettling happened at Apex Holdings. We became profitable. Like legally profitable. Once I stopped them from casually murdering their business rivals and forced them to actually use the corporate calendar, their efficiency skyrocketed. But with this newfound structure came a side effect I was entirely unprepared for. The alphas stopped trying to intimidate me. Instead, they started aggressively coexisting with me. It began with Vincent. The terrifying, centuries-old vampire lord had a reputation for draining his victims dry. But on a Tuesday morning, I found him standing awkwardly by my desk, staring at my cheap plastic coffee maker. Blood is losing its appeal. Vincent announced, his crimson eyes tracking the drip of the machine. "It tastes like iron and regret. Pour me one of those. Black. Lots of ice." I handed him an iced Americano in a plastic cup. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and sighed. The oppressive cold aura around him instantly vanished. From that day on, the most feared vampire on the East Coast refused to drink anything unless it was brewed by his Omega secretary. He even bought me a $3,000 espresso machine, which I immediately asset tagged for tax depreciation purposes. Then there was Ezra. The alchemist was a walking biohazard, constantly surrounded by the scent of ozone and decay. One afternoon, I walked into the coat closet and found him standing in the dark, his face buried deep into my spare winter coat. I paused in the doorway. Ezra, please tell me you aren't doing something that violates our newly established HR policies. He pulled his face out of the fabric, looking genuinely distressed. Your coat, Oliver. It smells like spring meadows and synthetic softening agents. It's downy, I said slowly. It blocks out the smell of the rot. Ezra whispered, stepping closer. Before I could back away, he leaned down and pressed his face into the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. He didn't bite. He didn't attack. He just breathed in the scent of my laundry detergent, his shoulders dropping 2 inches as the chronic tension left his body. I stood there, stiff as a board, wondering if I could bill the company for emotional damages. I decided I could, so I added a therapeutic scent provision to my next paycheck. Things only got weirder. Caleb the Dragon Shifter stopped breathing fire at the interns. Why? Because I introduced him to Microsoft Excel. Modern dragons, it turns out, don't hoard gold coins in caves. They hoard diversified stock portfolios and cryptocurrency. Once I built him a color-coded automated spreadsheet that tracked his net worth in real time, he was completely pacified. He would literally sit in my office for hours watching the green cells go up, occasionally emitting a sound that I can only describe as a reptilian purr. And Wyatt, the massive, bloodthirsty werewolf who nearly tore my throat out on day 1, he had essentially regressed into a 200-pound golden retriever. If I threw a crumpled-up Post-it note at the trash can and missed, Wyatt would catch it midair and bring it back to me. When I finalized the quarterly tax return, saving us $3 million, he actually nudged my hand with his massive head until I awkwardly patted his hair. I was managing 5 Dark Lords like they were a really intense daycare. But the turning point, the moment I realized I was in way over my head, happened on a rainy Thursday night at 1 a.m. I was the only one left in the office, furiously typing up an audit defense. The only sound was the heavy rain against the glass and the rhythmic clicking of my mechanical keyboard. The shadows in the corner of my office thickened and Julian materialized. The warlock looked awful. Deep purple bags hung under his eyes, and his magical aura was fraying at the edges, sparking violently. Julian, I asked, pausing my typing. I can't sleep, he rasped, his voice raw. The magic makes me hear everything. Every heartbeat in the city. Every lie. Every drop of blood hitting the pavement. It's so loud, Oliver. He drifted closer, his eyes hollow. But when you type the sound of your magic, your order, it drowns it out. It's the only quiet thing in the world. Before I could say anything, Julian collapsed on the small leather sofa next to my desk. He pulled his knees to his chest, shivering. I looked at him. I looked at my spreadsheet. I let out a long, heavy sigh, stood up, and took off my suit jacket. I walked over and draped it over his shoulders. The scent of downy fabric softener immediately seemed to calm the erratic sparks of his dark magic. Close your eyes, boss, I muttered softly. I went back to my desk and resumed typing. I didn't actually have any more data to enter, so I just started typing out the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody. The rhythmic typing sound filled the room again. Within 3 minutes, Julian's breathing evened out. He was fast asleep. At 2 a.m., the office door opened again. Vincent, Wyatt, Ezra, and Caleb filed in silently. They didn't say a word. They just saw Julian sleeping peacefully on the sofa, looked at me typing away in the dim light, and quietly sat down in various chairs around my office. By 2:30 a.m., I was surrounded by 5 of the most dangerous men in America, all of them resting quietly to the sound of my keyboard. I ordered a large pepperoni pizza on the company card. When it arrived, we sat on the floor of my office, eating out of the cardboard box in comfortable silence. Looking at them, Vincent carefully picking off the olives, Wyatt eating 3 slices at once, Caleb making sure his slice was perfectly heated with a tiny puff of breath, I realized something terrifying. They weren't just my bosses anymore. They were my incredibly dysfunctional, highly lethal, deeply broken family. And heaven help anyone who tried to mess with my family. Or my spreadsheets. It was the second Tuesday of October. In the corporate world, this is known as the precipice of the Q3 tax deadline. I had been sitting at my desk for 6 straight hours, fueled exclusively by Vincent's overpriced espresso and my own sheer administrative willpower. Things at Apex Holdings had been surprisingly peaceful. Wyatt was quietly chewing on a rubber tire in the corner of my office. Caleb was tracking the NASDAQ on his dual monitors. Everything was perfectly beautifully functional. until the entire eastern wall of the penthouse exploded. I barely had time to duck under my mahogany desk as a shower of shattered glass, concrete, and Italian marble rained down. The alarms blared a piercing shriek that cut through the dust. "We are the Vanguard," a booming, self-righteous voice echoed through the ruined office. "Creatures of the night, your reign of terror ends today. We bring the light of justice." I peeked out from under my desk. Standing in the rubble were a dozen men and women dressed in gleaming, pristine white tactical gear. They were wielding weapons glowing with intense, blinding holy magic, and leading them Richard Sterling, my former boss, the man who still owed me 3 months of unpaid overtime. Instantly, my 5 alphas reacted. The peaceful, domesticated men I knew vanished, replaced by the apex predators the world feared. Wyatt unleashed a deafening roar, his bones cracking and shifting as he transformed into a massive 9-foot-tall werewolf, his gold eyes burning with murderous intent. Julian floated into the air, the room immediately plunging into unnatural darkness as tendrils of shadow whipped out like blades. Caleb's skin hardened into charcoal black dragon scales, and Ezra popped the cork on a vial of something that immediately started melting the carpet. "Kill them all!" Vincent hissed, his fangs fully descended, his speed a blur as he charged the paladins. The battle was absolute chaos. Holy light clashed with hellfire. Desks were smashed. The Vanguard soldiers were well-trained, throwing nets of divine energy that burned the Alpha's skin. I stayed under my desk, clutching my wireless mouse like a protective amulet. I didn't care about their holy war. I only cared about the Q3 expense reports. Then the unspeakable happened. One of the Vanguard soldiers, panicking as Wyatt lunged at him blindly, fired a massive blast of holy light. It completely missed the werewolf. Instead, it struck my workstation. First, the $3,000 espresso machine exploded into a cloud of steam and shrapnel. Then the blast hit my computer tower. The screen flickered, sparked violently, and went entirely black. I froze. I hadn't hit save in 45 minutes. 3 days. 3 days of categorizing Caleb's cryptocurrency losses, Ezra's venom requisitions, and Vincent's blood bank bribes into perfectly formatted, color-coded pivot tables. Gone. Vaporized by a glowing idiot in a white suit. The fear that usually kept my Omega instincts quiet completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, blinding administrative rage. I stepped out from behind the ruined desk. The temperature in the room didn't just drop, it plummeted to the absolute zero of a human resources termination meeting. "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried a magical frequency that made the very air vibrate. Both the Alphas and the Vanguard froze, turning to look at me. "My data," I whispered, my voice trembling with raw fury. "My espresso machine." Richard Sterling smirked from across the room. "Oliver, you work for these monsters, pathetic. Men smite the Omega." 2 Vanguard paladins raised their staffs, firing twin beams of blinding, lethal holy energy straight at my chest. "Oliver, no!" Julian screamed, trying to dive in front of me. He didn't need to. The order magic didn't just flare this time, it fully awakened. I raised my hand. With a sharp digital sound, a massive, semi-transparent shield materialized in the air in front of me. It wasn't a magical ward, it was a giant glowing green Excel spreadsheet. The holy beams hit the grid. The cells flashed with a giant value error, and the magic bounced right off, ricocheting into the ceiling. Richard Sterling's jaw dropped. "What kind of dark magic is that?" "It's conditional formatting, you illiterate hack," I screamed. I thrust my hands forward. Dozens of heavy-duty magical duct tape rolls materialized out of thin air. Unspooling at the speed of light, they wrapped around the Vanguard soldiers, binding their arms to their sides, sealing their mouths shut, and taping them securely to the structural pillars of the office. One paladin tried to charge me with a glowing sword. I manifested a giant silver ergonomic stapler in my right hand. I didn't even aim. I just pulled the trigger. A barrage of heavy-duty magical staples shot out like a machine gun, pinning the paladin's pristine white cape to the drywall, leaving him dangling helplessly off the floor. "Who's next?" I yelled, my eyes literally glowing with neon yellow post-it note energy. "Do you have any idea what the data recovery fees are going to cost? I will invoice your widows." The remaining Vanguard soldiers, realizing they were not fighting an Omega, but the physical embodiment of corporate bureaucracy, broke. They turned and fled toward the stairs, dragging whoever they could with them. Richard Sterling sprinted away faster than anyone, screaming something about a demon. The room fell into a heavy, ringing silence. The only sound was the fizzing of my ruined hard drive. The adrenaline suddenly drained from my body. The glowing Excel shield vanished. I dropped to my knees in the middle of the rubble, staring at my blackened monitor. I covered my face with my hands, and a pathetic, exhausted sob escaped my throat. Immediately, the 5 most dangerous men in America rushed to my side. They dropped to their knees in the glass and debris surrounding me in a tight, protective circle. "Oliver," Vincent murmured, his cold hand gently touching my shoulder. "Are you hurt? Did their magic burn you?" "I will kill them," Wyatt growled, his massive werewolf hands hovering over me anxiously. "I will hunt them down. Don't cry, little one." "It's gone," I sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at the computer tower. "The pivot tables, the tax deductions. I have to re-enter all the receipts manually." The alphas stared at me. Then they looked at the smoking computer. Then they looked at the Vanguard soldiers I had practically mummified in duct tape. They didn't see a terrified, helpless Omega. They saw a man who had just defended their home and bent reality to his will, all because someone ruined his paperwork. As I sat there weeping over unsaved data, Julian exchanged a look with Caleb. Vincent looked at Wyatt. Ezra just stared at me, completely spellbound. In that moment of absolute chaotic ruin, all 5 of them realized the exact same terrifying truth. They were hopelessly, irrevocably, utterly in love with me. The week following the Vanguard attack, the dynamic at Apex Holdings shifted from dysfunctional daycare to aggressively overbearing protection detail. I had expected my bosses to be grateful that I saved their lives and trapped their enemies in magical office supplies. I did not expect them to turn into 5 terrifying, superpowered simps. It started with the hardware. When I arrived at work on Thursday, my charred computer tower was gone. In its place sat a custom-built aerospace-grade titanium workstation with a liquid cooling system that hummed softer than a whisper. Caleb was standing next to it, proudly nudging a solid gold brick across my desk to serve as a paperweight. Then came the food. Vincent fired the catering company and began personally flying to Italy every morning, using his vampiric speed just to bring me fresh artisan croissants and beans roasted by monks. Wyatt bought me a $5,000 ergonomic mesh chair and practically growled at anyone who walked within a 10-foot radius of my cubicle. Ezra started weaving invisible lavender-scented protective wards around my coffee mug so I wouldn't burn my tongue, and Julian just stared at me. He hovered in the corner, his shadows wrapping around my ankles like affectionate cats, his dark eyes tracking my every breath with a terrifying, reverent intensity. It was an HR nightmare. But the real nightmare wasn't their behavior, it was mine. Every time Vincent remembered my exact coffee order, my heart skipped a beat. When Wyatt leaned over to inspect my spreadsheets, smelling of pine and rain, my face flushed hotly. I caught myself actually smiling when Caleb complained about capital gains taxes. I was an Omega, yes, but I was a professional. I was supposed to be immune to the gravitational pull of alpha pheromones. Yet somehow, amidst the tax audits and property damage, I had accidentally fallen deeply, hopelessly in love with 5 immortal warlords. I tried to suppress it. I color-coded my feelings and shoved them into a mental folder labeled "Do Not Open Conflict of Interest." They were ancient apex predators. I was a guy who got excited about high-yield savings accounts. It was never going to work. I should have left it at that. But my downfall has always been my need for complete, meticulous record-keeping. It was late Friday night. I was down in Sub-Basement C, a heavily warded vault where Apex Holdings kept its oldest archives. I was trying to reconstruct the Q3 data by digging up the previous year's physical ledgers. The vault was dark, smelling of dust and old magic. As I pulled a heavy box off a high shelf, a false panel in the wall clicked open. My flashlight beam caught something hidden inside the cavity. It wasn't a tax ledger, it was a thick black leather journal sealed with a biometric lock. Fortunately, Julian had given me master override access to the entire building so I could optimize the smart thermostat. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. The book popped open. The handwriting inside belonged to Ezra with annotations from Julian and Vincent. The title page read, "The Blood Curse Prognosis and Containment." Frowning, I flipped through the heavy parchment pages. The further I read, the colder the sub-basement felt. Entry 42. The magical degradation is accelerating. The curse placed upon our bloodline centuries ago is nearing its terminal phase. Caleb's internal temperature is reaching critical mass. Wyatt is losing his mind to the wolf. Without an external neutralizing force, cellular magic combustion will reach 100% within the year. We will burn from the inside out. I swallowed hard, turning the page. Entry 89. We found him. The anomaly. Oliver. My breath hitched. I stared at my own name written in Ezra's sharp clinical script. Entry 90. His order magic doesn't just block holy attacks, it stabilizes our curse. When he exerts authority, when his aura envelops us, the pain stops. The degradation halts. He is the Omega Catalyst. We must keep him here at all costs. Without him, we die. He is our only tether to sanity. I stopped reading. The heavy journal slipped from my hands, hitting the concrete floor with a dull sound. The silence in the vault was deafening. My chest tightened, a sharp, suffocating ache blooming behind my ribs. Without him, we die. Suddenly, everything made sickening sense. The $3,000 espresso machine, the exorbitant salary, the sudden obedience, the gentle touches, and the lingering looks. It wasn't because they cared about me. It wasn't because I had somehow miraculously become important to them as a person. I was an organic life support machine, a walking, talking spreadsheet making magical dialysis filter. They didn't love me. They were just terrified of dying. And they were playing whatever part they needed to play, simulating a weird, dysfunctional family, just to keep their medical equipment plugged in. I sat on the cold floor of the vault for a long time. I didn't cry. My heart felt completely, utterly hollowed out like a bankrupt shell corporation. I had survived Richard Sterling exploiting my labor, but surviving these 5 men exploiting my soul, that was going to break me. And I refuse to be broken. I am an administrative manager. When a contract is built on fraudulent terms, you terminate the agreement. An hour later, I rode the elevator up to the penthouse. The office was quiet, bathed in the dim neon glow of the New York skyline. The Alphas were out on a persuasion mission in Queens. I walked into my office. I pulled an empty cardboard box from the supply closet. I carefully packed my ergonomic stapler, my favorite pens, and my dying succulent, which, thanks to Ezra's magic, was now thriving and blooming small blue flowers. I logged into my new titanium computer and opened a blank Word document. To the Executive Board of Apex Holdings. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position as Executive Secretary and Administrative Manager. Please forward my final paycheck, including my accrued Q3 overtime, to the P.O. box listed on my file. Health insurance benefits are no longer required. Regards, Oliver. I printed it out, signed it in blue ink, and placed it perfectly in the center of my desk. I took off my company ID lanyard and laid it next to the letter. I picked up my box, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button for the lobby. The doors slid shut, cutting off my view of the office I had accidentally turned into a home. Outside, a freezing November sleet was falling on the streets of Brooklyn. I hailed a yellow cab, gave the driver an address out of the city, and didn't look back. I made it exactly 36 hours as an unemployed, non-magical civilian. I was sitting at a sticky table in JFK Terminal 4, waiting for a delayed flight to Ohio, eating a stale $14 sandwich. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a vast empty spreadsheet where my heart used to be. I pulled out my phone to check my banking app. My balance was practically zero. Direct deposit for my final paycheck hadn't cleared. Typical. Then I looked up at the CNN broadcast playing on the airport TVs. The banner at the bottom of the screen flashed in bright red. Breaking news: financial district under siege. Unprecedented terrorist attack. I choked on my sandwich. On the screen, Wall Street was an absolute war zone. A massive 9-foot werewolf was tearing a bank vault door off its hinges. A hurricane of black shadows was tossing police cars like toys. A dragon was perched on the New York Stock Exchange, breathing columns of raw hellfire into the sky. They had completely lost their minds. Without my order magic acting as their dialysis machine, the curse was rapidly tearing through their sanity, turning them into the apocalyptic monsters the world always claimed they were. And standing right in the middle of the carnage, leading an army of vanguard paladins in gleaming white armor, was my former boss, Richard Sterling. He was shouting into a megaphone about purging the unholy beasts while completely ignoring the collateral property damage. I stared at the screen. Richard Sterling, the man who still owed me 3 months of unpaid overtime from Lightbringer Corp. And now he was trying to kill the 5 men who, well, the men who had lied to me, yes, but they were my liars. I stood up, threw my stale sandwich in the trash, and walked out of the terminal. I had pending invoices to collect. An hour later, my yellow cab dropped me off at the police barricade 2 miles from Wall Street. I walked the rest of the way. The air was thick with smoke ozone and the screech of holy magic clashing with dark energy. Paladins were firing blasts of blinding white light, while my 5 former bosses retaliated with apocalyptic fury. I casually strolled past a burning hot dog stand. A vanguard soldier spotted me and blindly threw a holy spear of light directly at my chest. I didn't even flinch. The moment the spear hit my aura, there was a familiar popping sound, and the deadly weapon transformed into a giant harmless neon pink foam noodle. It hit me on the nose and fell to the asphalt. I kept walking. The closer I got to the center of the battle, the more my order magic flared, completely neutralizing the chaotic energy around me. I finally reached the steps of Federal Hall. Wyatt, fully shifted into his terrifying werewolf form, was currently holding a massive bronze street lamp above his head, ready to throw it at a squad of paladins. "Wyatt," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise of battle like a guillotine. The giant werewolf froze. He slowly turned his massive blood-soaked head toward me. "Put the municipal property down," I ordered, tapping my foot. "Do you have any idea what the city fines are for destroying historical landmarks? Down, now." Wyatt whimpered. The terrifying apex predator dropped the street lamp, which clattered loudly against the pavement. He instantly began shrinking, bones cracking and fur receding until he was just Wyatt, bruised bloody and falling to his knees. The other 4 stopped immediately. The hellfire ceased. The shadows vanished. The poison dissolved. Within seconds, the 5 most dangerous men in the world had abandoned the fight entirely. They stumbled through the rubble, collapsing into a semicircle around me. They looked awful, pale, shaking, and completely wrecked. "Oliver!" Julian gasped, his eyes wide with a desperate, agonizing hope. "You came back." "I came for my final paycheck." I lied, crossing my arms defensively to hide how much my hands were shaking. "And to tell you that I read the journal. I know about the curse. I know I'm just a walking battery pack for your magical life support." "No," Vincent rasped, coughing up a streak of dark blood. "No, Oliver, you didn't read the end. The magic only kept us alive. But you—" Caleb interrupted, his voice breaking as he looked up at me from the dirt. "You taught us how to live. Before you, we were just waiting to burn. But then you yelled at me about Excel formulas. You made Julian sleep. You made this miserable, cursed existence actually mean something." Ezra reached out his hand, stopping inches from my shoe, too afraid to touch me. "We lied because we were terrified. If you knew we were dying, you would have stayed out of pity. Or worse, you would have run. But without you, Oliver, we don't want to survive." Wyatt let out a broken, gut-wrenching sob. "Let us burn, little one. It is better than living without you. Just don't look at us like we are just your employers anymore." I looked down at them. 5 immortal warlords kneeling in the ashes of Wall Street, surrendering to the void, just because I left my desk empty. My heart, that bankrupt shell corporation, suddenly received a massive, overwhelming influx of capital. "You are all a complete HR nightmare," I whispered, my vision blurring with tears. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my favorite blue ink pen. I clicked it. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "A verbal apology is insufficient for a breach of contract." I announced, my voice trembling but filled with raw administrative authority. "I require a legally binding merger, a full, permanent magical bond, effective immediately." The 5 of them looked at me, pure shock, replacing their despair. "Oliver," Julian breathed, "are you sure it is forever?" "I don't do short-term investments," I snapped. "Now give me your hands before I deduct this from your holiday bonuses." They scrambled up, reaching for me. The moment our hands connected, the world went completely white. It wasn't a flare of magic, it was a supernova. My order magic fused perfectly with their chaos. I felt their pain, their curse, and an overwhelming, all-consuming tide of absolute, unconditional love. The curse didn't just halt, it shattered. We turned as one entity to face Richard Sterling, who was staring at us in absolute terror. His vanguard army was already dropping their weapons, realizing they were no longer fighting monsters. They were fighting a perfectly optimized, unkillable syndicate. I stepped forward, my eyes glowing with neon green, terrifying, bureaucratic power. I manifested a glowing silver clipboard in a pen. "Richard," I said smoothly, teleporting directly in front of him. He shrieked and fell backward onto the pavement. "Demon!" Sterling screamed, scrambling away. "Stay back!" Actually, I am the new Chief Operating Officer of Apex Holdings. I corrected him, holding out the clipboard. And according to my calculations, with your unpaid overtime hazard pay, emotional distress, and 3 years of compound interest, you owe me exactly $42.5 million. Sterling gaped at me. I don't have that kind of liquid capital. I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that I definitely learned from Vincent. I know, I whispered. Which is why you are going to sign over all controlling shares of Lightbringer Corp. Consider this a hostile takeover. Behind me, 5 fiercely protective newly cured alphas cracked their knuckles in perfect lethal synchronization. Richard Sterling looked at them. He looked at my glowing clipboard. With a whimpering sob, he took the pen and signed. Acquiring a righteous magical corporation like Lightbringer Corp requires exactly 4,200 pages of legal documentation, 3 separate tax loopholes, and a minor threatening display of draconic hellfire. I know this because I personally audited every single page. It has been 6 months since the incident on Wall Street. The magical financial sector is still recovering from the shock, but frankly, the market has never been more stable. Once you remove a corrupt, embezzling hypocrite like Richard Sterling and replace him with a perfectly optimized, ruthlessly efficient administrative system, profit margins naturally soar. Sterling, by the way, is currently serving a 50-year sentence in a magical maximum security prison. I occasionally send him itemized invoices for the postage used to mail his court documents. It's the little things in life that bring me joy. As for Apex Holdings, we didn't just survive, we absorbed Lightbringer Corp entirely. We are now the single largest completely legitimate, universally feared magical conglomerate in the United States. And as of last Tuesday, I am officially the Chief Executive Officer. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at the massive white marble kitchen island in our new hyper-secure 20,000 square foot Manhattan penthouse. The morning sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over my perfectly color-coded Q1 financial projections. I took a sip from my mug. The espresso was flawless. Temperature acceptable, Oliver, a smooth, aristocratic voice asked from behind me. I didn't even look up from my iPad. It's perfect, Vincent. The oat-milk ratio is exactly 30%. You are getting better at the steam wand. The centuries-old vampire lord, a creature who used to strike terror into the hearts of mortals, smiled proudly, wiping down the $5,000 espresso machine with a microfiber cloth. The penthouse was a symphony of domesticated apex predators. To my left, Wyatt was currently in his human form, wearing sweatpants and a tight black t-shirt, using his enhanced werewolf strength to furiously swiffer the kitchen floor. He was humming a Taylor Swift song. Every time he finished a section, his golden eyes would dart toward me, waiting for a nod of approval. "Good job on the grout, Wyatt," I murmured, highlighting a cell on my spreadsheet. He beamed, practically wagging an invisible tail, and scrubbed harder. Over by the industrial stove, Caleb, the terrifying dragon shifter, was wearing a pink apron that read, "Kiss the cook or burn." He held a tray of perfectly formed creme brulee. Instead of using a kitchen torch, he simply leaned over, opened his mouth, and let out a tiny, perfectly controlled stream of blue hellfire, caramelizing the sugar on all 6 desserts simultaneously. "Breakfast is almost ready, little hoarder," Caleb grumbled affectionately, setting a plate of pastries near my elbow. "Don't interrupt his reading." "Caleb," Julian chastised softly. The warlock was hovering 2 feet off the ground near the laundry room. His dark, shadowy tendrils, the same tendrils that once crushed enemy paladins, were currently holding a steaming iron, perfectly pressing the collar of my bespoke Tom Ford suit. And finally, Ezra walked into the kitchen looking as meticulous as ever. He wasn't carrying vials of highly toxic acid today. Instead, he was holding a small, elegant glass bottle. "I adjusted the formula," the alchemist said, gently spritzing the air near my wrist. "Notes of bergamot cedar and synthetic downy fabric softener. It balances your natural omega scent without triggering my sensory overload. What do you think?" I inhaled deeply. It smelled like safety. "It's approved for daily use, Ezra, thank you." I set my iPad down and looked at the 5 of them. 5 immortal warlords. 5 former criminals who used to run a syndicate like a frat house. Now they were a perfectly synchronized, highly lethal, fiercely protective family. My family. I looked down at my left wrist. Right over my pulse point, glowing with a soft, steady silver light, was the bond mark. It didn't look like a traditional magical rune. It looked exactly like a small, elegantly drawn fountain pen. Whenever I felt stressed, I could feel their collective calm washing over me through the bond. And whenever the dark magic in their blood tried to whisper to them, my order magic silenced it instantly, keeping them grounded safe and completely sane. We were a closed ecosystem, a perfectly balanced ledger. "All right, gentlemen," I announced, tapping my pen against the marble counter. 5 alpha heads snapped toward me in instant attention. The Q1 reports are pristine. The hostile takeover is fully integrated, which means we have a clear schedule for the weekend. "A mission?" Wyatt asked eagerly, his eyes flashing. "Who are we hunting?" "And we are hunting for bulk paper towels and a new patio set," I corrected him, pulling out a printed list. "We are going to Costco." A collective groan echoed through the kitchen. "Oliver, please." Vincent sighed, looking pained. "The fluorescent lighting in that warehouse is aggressively offensive to my retinas. Can't we just buy the company?" "No, Vincent. Buying Costco is not in the Q2 budget. We are going, and Caleb is pushing the oversized cart because he has the highest core strength. End of discussion." They grumbled, but through the bond, I could feel an overwhelming wave of absolute unconditional fondness radiating from all 5 of them. They loved my rules. They loved my structure. They just loved me. I stood up, adjusting my perfectly ironed suit jacket as Julian's shadows draped it over my shoulders. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the sprawling, glittering skyline of New York City. The city used to look so big, so intimidating. Now it just looked like a giant spreadsheet waiting to be optimized. I leaned against the glass, looking straight ahead. Fourth wall break. "People always tell you that working for magical criminals is a suicide mission," I said, speaking directly to the empty air, a small wry smile playing on my lips. "They tell you to stick to the righteous companies, to keep your head down and accept the unpaid overtime." I took a sip of my perfect oat milk latte. But look at me. I have full top-tier medical and dental coverage. My overtime is calculated with compound interest. I am the CEO of the most powerful corporation in America, and I have 5 of the most terrifying, fiercely loyal, devastatingly handsome husbands in the world currently arguing over who gets to carry my briefcase to the armored SUV. I winked. "So, here is my final piece of administrative advice to you: never settle for a bad contract. Never underestimate the power of an Excel pivot table. And if you have to clean up your boss's messes, make sure you invoice them for it, because you never know when you might end up owning the whole damn company." Behind me, something shattered. "Caleb," Wyatt yelled, "you used too much hellfire. The pastries are ash." "I am a dragon, not a convection oven," Caleb roared back. I sighed, shaking my head, but my smile only grew wider. "I have to go," I whispered. "I need to file a property damage report before 9 a.m. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week's vlog is just 30 minutes of 5 dark lords trying to navigate the Costco sample aisles without murdering anyone.